Michael Van Runkle here for HotCars.com, and this is an exciting one because today I've got a Toyota GR86 to play with. I've never driven any of these, the Scion, the Subaru, or the Toyota version. So when this one arrived and it was an automatic, I was totally surprised. I didn't even know they made this in an automatic. But it's sort of like Toyota, Subaru. Why? Well, let's go find out. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks. Well, the outside has definitely been superfied lately, but the inside is surprisingly comfortable and roomy. It's a small car for sure, but like, I'm 6'1" with long legs. I'm good. I can scoot my seat back a bunch more, but I'm gonna be up here in the canyon, so I've got it where I'm comfortable. Plenty of room, and would I even be a journalist if I didn't point out all the cup holders? 1 in the door, 2 in the other door, 3, 4, 5. All right. And the back seats fold down, which is really nice for a 2+2. It's got 4 seats, unlike the Supra, against which it almost feels like it's starting to compete at a fraction of the price. But then we get into the drivetrain, and those aren't Supra noises. It's just not quite as potent sounding. Boxer flat 4, 228 horsepower, 184 pound-feet of torque. You give it a couple revs here, it starts to sound a little better, but nothing like the Supra, not even close. So then you use the total fake-out shifter, which looks like a manual because it's sort of canted over, and you can move it like this, but it's an automatic, and away we go. Visibility is okay, I would say. Not terrible, but not too great. It's good out front. You got a low roof. It does, much like the Supra, have a bit of a double bubble. You can see that on the inside and the outside. And then you're pulling away, and it's really one of those engines where it's got a lot of low-end torque for a low displacement motor. It's 2.4 liters. They've optimized the torque curve to try and give it lots of low-end pep, really for city driving. Well, you can pop it over into manual, and you can shift it up and down like most Tiptronic style or dual clutch automatics. Well, you've also got paddle shifters. To a certain extent, Toyota tuned this thing more for city driving. The gear ratios are a little weird. I would expect them to be really close together, but in second, and then you shift up and you drop down really far. I want them to be just really close ratio, so that coming into a curve, you can just bang down a shift and not lose too much power. Then again, we've got a good amount of torque down low compared to the torque curve. I think peak torque hits at 3,500 RPM. So you're not exactly losing power, but that says more about power in the upper end of the rev range. This kind of reminds me of the Alfa Romeo Giulia Estrema, not the Quadrifoglio, obviously, but the Giulia Estrema has a similar sensation of having a lot of power, but then when you really mash it, it doesn't get more power up top. And where the Giulia was a ton of fun to drive, this thing is way more precise. We're talking 2,800 pounds, 2,850 for the automatic, and it's just on rails. We're on Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, and they just keep this thing planted even though it's a square setup, only 215 millimeter wide all around. Again, big surprise. This is a rear-wheel drive car. We're not in some front-wheel drive commuter. Give us some wider rubber at the rear. And when you start getting up into the upper rev range, it's really screaming, and it almost sounds good, but you're getting engine and intake. You're not getting exhaust. Again, we'll come back to that a little later. Now, when you're in second gear, you've got a good amount of power, but it's never going to be overwhelming. And to a certain extent, That's kind of what I like about this car. I'm up here in the canyons, and I'm not about to kill myself for someone else. Or maybe a Caltrans worker. Modern cars have really just gotten so powerful that you can't even really drive them safely. You're gonna kill everything in sight. You're gonna kill a deer. You're gonna kill a cyclist. You're gonna kill yourself and the car because you're going 100 miles an hour on public roads. And that's just really dangerous. Throw in the fact that you're probably gonna get a ticket. Now this thing delivers a lot of the same fun, but you don't have to be going quite as fast. It feels like you're going fast because you're really low. There's a lot of sensation coming through the steering wheel. You've got a lot of road noise because, again, this is not a particularly refined car. This thing starts at $27,500. Oh, there's another one. This thing starts at $27,500. This is the GR86 Premium, which gets you some nicer stuff, better seat materials. You got a touch screen. It does CarPlay. You got Bluetooth and everything. It's got warnings when you start to change lanes or if you need to brake, which I don't particularly like. Now, Toyota claimed they wanted to stiffen up the chassis, and it's definitely stiff. They added dampers with increased rebound, which means they'll pop up a little bit better. On a firm road like this with a lot of imperfections, it's not particularly comfortable, but you're pretty planted on stuff that's pretty smooth. And I'm basically very impressed with how this thing handles given the size tires that we're on. It's a lot of fun. I just walked away from this guy in a Golf R no problem because this thing weighs so little. It's just, what a great little track toy. And you can learn so much about choosing lines, choosing your brake points. You're gonna be full throttle, so you're less worried about power delivery and more worried about doing all the little things right. And then you can just feel every inch that the tires are covering. It's just, what a great car. And I can only imagine what this would be like with a manual. I'd be having all that much more fun rev matching and picking my gears a little bit better. Now, comparing this car to a Supra up in these canyons, and to a certain extent, Toyota is now competing against itself with these two models, given how similar in looks they're becoming, even though this costs significantly less. The Supra is even sharper, and it's just got a ton more power. Try not to kill any cyclists here. I would argue that I would prefer this car over a Supra. The Supra has something that's a little bit numb about it. I think that might be the BMW influence. Then again, on the Supra, you've also got to take into consideration that the one I drove had just been torched by Car and Driver for a month, apparently, and the tires were like completely shot. So maybe a new Supra 3.0 with the manual, but that's gonna cost you like 60 grand, whereas this thing, you get it in the base version, no options. I don't need lane departure warnings and braking warnings, automatic collision stuff. I just want a manual sports car that's super lightweight, has just enough power to be fun, and drives like it's on rails. But coming back to some of the other stuff I mentioned before, if I were buying this car, I've never driven a car that screams out desperately for some modifications quite like the GR86. I think if you splurged on another 2 grand worth of shocks, you got some lighter wheels, some slightly wider tires, all of a sudden, this thing would be transformed in terms of handling. Then you do maybe some intake exhaust, maybe an ECU tune, though not here in California anymore. And all of a sudden, you've got 30, 40 more horsepower, maybe even 20, 10% more would be that much of a difference that this car would be transformed. Do we want it to have STI power? Of course we do. Put a turbo on it, supercharge this thing to your heart's galore. But as Subaru and Toyota have said repeatedly, they're not doing that because then they would have to upgrade everything else and add weight, and you're losing some of that lightweight driving dynamic. And when it comes to lightweight sports cars right now, really there's only 2 other options that come to mind. You got the Mazda Miata, which I've never driven any Miata of any generation ever. If anyone is watching this and wants to help me out with that, I'd very much appreciate it. And then you've got a Porsche Boxster or Cayman. also below 3,000 pounds in the right spec. Now the Miata might be a similar price point as this car. The Boxster and Cayman are on a whole different level, competing more with the Supra. But if I were going Boxster or Cayman, I'd have to go Cayman GTS 4.0, hands down, because that is just the greatest driving car I think I've driven in terms of production cars. That Volvo Cyan P1800 thing was an absolute screamer too, and I loved driving it up here. Again though, that's another one that has so much power, you're really risking being on the ragged, dangerous edge. Now, little details that I have to nitpick about. The main thing that really bugs me about this car, because I'm pretty comfortable at my size and weight, these seats are great, plenty of headroom and legroom like I mentioned, the road noise really gets to me. And if you're gonna have a lot of road noise like this, you better have a really good sound system, and this car has an okay sound system. Again, maybe a few little upgrades. But now we're starting to talk about, thousands of dollars on top of $27,500. It starts to add up pretty quickly. I wish this car started at more like $22,000. And then you make your modifications, make it your own, and you're still under 30. That would just be the best of all worlds. Now, I think Toyota and Subaru have purposefully sort of changed this and listened to the market and seen what people are doing, and that sort of justifies the higher price. But to my mind, I would go base, total stripper, no options, and then play with it to my heart's delight. Coming down the hill, of course, you're gonna start worrying about brakes. And I would worry about the brakes going around a track in the GR86. Another thing that would definitely need some upgrade. These actually do pretty well. And I think that's partly because the tires run out of grip before the brakes run out of bite. I haven't run into any brake fade at all so far, but that would probably start to happen with rotors this small and pads this small if we were on the track. And that sort of brings us to my wrap-up thoughts on the GR86. If you wanted to really enjoy this car, get it with the manual. And if you were gonna daily drive it, you would want probably a normal automatic. If you're gonna be tracking a car though, do you wanna be tracking your brand new car? Will your warranty cover whatever happens if you get into a little bit of trouble, if you cause a little bit of damage on the track, and you've already modded it with all the track stuff that I just mentioned? It's like, sort of, why not just get an E36 M3? It's priced around the same point for a slightly high mileage example, and you can modify that in a similar fashion as a GR86. Now, to be fair, this is lower. The center of gravity is lower and it's lighter, and I love it for all of those qualities. And they even call this thing, the color red is Track B Red, Track Bread. Get it? But if you were actually gonna go out and track this thing, I would want a bunch of modifications, which makes me think, you might as well get an E36 M3 that you don't have to care about. Then again, E36 M3s are skyrocketing in value, and this thing starts at $27,900. And that's just absolutely excellent in terms of pricing. Cheaper is always better, and you don't want to actually ruin your brand new car. Would Toyota void your warranty for a little bit of track fun? They just might. But your modifications might have already done that anyway. In the meantime, you're having a ton of fun driving this car up in the canyons. Keep it stock, keep that warranty. I don't think there's a car quite like this. Of course, today with MSRPs completely disconnected from the values dealers are charging, I apologize, you might have to pay 10 grand over to get this car. I can't pay attention to all that because it varies so much depending on your location. But if you are looking for a cheap, fun, exciting, engaging, lightweight sports car, I don't know if there's anything quite like this, bar a Miata. They say Miatas are always the answer, but there's a good chance Toyota created an answer of their own when they partnered with Subaru to make the FRS, the BRZ, and now the GR86. This thing's a ton of fun. I hope you enjoyed watching it, even though you didn't get to watch me miss any downshifts like I always do driving a manual car up here. I hope you learned something, and as always, before you sign off, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks.